9 experienced hikers set out on a trek through the frozen wilderness of Soviet Russia, never to return. Their lifeless bodies were later found scattered across the snow, some half-naked, some brutally injured, and one missing her tongue and eyes. Their tent had been torn open from the inside. Their footprints led deep into the forest. No signs of struggle. No traces of an attacker. Just eerie, inexplicable clues left behind in the snow. What were they running from? What could cause experienced mountaineers to flee into the freezing night without shoes, without coats, knowing they would die within minutes? A violent avalanche? A Soviet military cover-up? Or something far more terrifying, something that still lurks in the Ural Mountains today? This is the chilling mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident, one of the most disturbing and unexplained cases in modern history. And even after decades of investigations, one question remains: what really happened to them? It began as an adventure. January 1959. The hikers, 7 men and 2 women, were students at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, a prestigious university in Soviet Russia. They were experienced mountaineers, trained for extreme cold, and had embarked on similar expeditions before. Their leader, 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, had carefully planned the route, ensuring they had enough supplies, the right equipment, and the experience to handle the harsh terrain. They were excited, confident, and prepared for what lay ahead. Their goal was to reach the peak of Otorten Mountain, a remote and dangerous trail deep within the Ural mountain range. But to get there, they had to pass through an area that local Mansi tribesmen called Kholat Syakhl, meaning Mountain of the Dead. To the locals, it was a cursed place, a land where people had vanished before, a land where spirits were said to wander. But the hikers laughed at the superstitions. They were young. They were strong. And they were determined to complete their journey. The group left on January 25th, traveling by train and then by truck to reach the last inhabited village before the mountains. From there, they set out on foot, trekking through thick snow, ice, and bitter winds. They kept detailed records, writing in their diaries and taking photographs along the way. Their last photos show them smiling, posing with their skis, huddling together for warmth. Everything seemed normal. They even made jokes about their struggles with the cold. Then, something changed. One of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, suddenly fell ill, experiencing sharp pain in his joints. It was a mild sickness, but enough for him to turn back while the others continued forward. As he waved goodbye, he had no idea he would never see his friends again. For the next few days, the group continued their trek. They encountered harsh conditions, strong winds, sub-zero temperatures, and deep snowdrifts, but they pressed on. On February 1st, they reached a treeless slope of Kholat Syakhl, where they decided to set up camp for the night. This decision puzzled investigators later. They had been only 1 kilometer away from the safety of the forest, where they could have had more shelter from the wind. But for some reason, they chose this open, exposed location instead. Their last diary entry was uneventful. "The weather is worsening, but we continue forward." Those were the last words they ever wrote. Weeks passed with no word from the hikers. Their families grew anxious. Something was wrong. They should have returned by now. On February 20th, the Soviet government launched a search party. Local guides, police, and military officers scoured the mountains, braving the freezing cold to locate the missing group. What they found was far worse than anyone could have imagined. The first thing they discovered was the tent. It was still standing, but something was horribly wrong. The canvas had been ripped open from the inside. It was as if the hikers had clawed their way out in a blind panic, desperate to escape something. But escape what? Inside the tent, their belongings were neatly arranged. Their boots, jackets, backpacks, food, everything was still there, undisturbed. If they were running from an avalanche, why didn't they take their gear? Why didn't they at least put on their shoes? Following a trail of footprints in the snow, the search party soon made another horrifying discovery. The first 2 bodies were found at the edge of the forest, near a small fire. They were half naked, barefoot, wearing only their underclothes. Their hands were burned, their fingers blackened with frostbite. It seemed they had tried to start a fire to stay warm, but what had driven them into the woods like this? A few hundred meters away, 3 more bodies were found, sprawled in the snow, positioned as if they had been trying to crawl back to the tent before succumbing to the cold. But the worst was yet to come. 2 months later, the last 4 hikers were found buried beneath 4 meters of snow, deep in a ravine. But their injuries were unexplainable. 1 had a crushed skull. 2 had shattered rib cages, as if they had been hit with a force stronger than a car crash. 1 woman, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found without her tongue, her eyes, and parts of her face. There were no external wounds, no signs of an animal attack, no evidence of a struggle. It was as if something had crushed them from the inside. Even stranger, some of their clothing was found to be radioactive. What could explain these bizarre injuries? What could cause a group of experienced hikers to flee into the night, half-dressed, only to meet such a brutal fate? Some believe an avalanche was responsible. The theory suggests that a sudden slab of snow collapsed onto their tent, forcing them to cut their way out and flee in panic. But no evidence of an avalanche was ever found. The bodies weren't buried under deep snow, and their injuries were too extreme to be caused by falling ice alone. Others believe they stumbled upon a Soviet military experiment, perhaps a classified weapon test or a radiation exposure incident. Some claim strange orbs of light were seen in the sky near the pass that night. But if the Soviet military was involved, why leave the bodies behind? Then there are the more terrifying theories, that the hikers were chased by something not entirely human. Some investigators believe low-frequency sound waves caused by the wind passing through the mountains may have triggered intense fear, confusion, and hallucinations. Could they have fled in terror from something that wasn't even real? In 2021, modern researchers concluded that a delayed slab avalanche was the most likely explanation. But even with this theory, some questions remain unanswered. Why were some of their clothes radioactive? Why was the case sealed so quickly by Soviet authorities? And why does this mystery still haunt us today? The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most disturbing unsolved cases in true crime history. What do you think happened to them? Was it an avalanche, a government cover-up, or something we may never understand? If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more chilling true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.